Now, what you will be responsible for on the quiz. On the quiz, you're going to be responsible for pretty much what's on the first page, page 1, and the back side is just pictures of the machine. So, really, if you know what's on page 1 here and understand the rules of the road here, you should be in good shape. What we are doing here today, we're going to try and get through almost all of our machines. And then we'll give those who are not here, we'll give them a link to the video and record it right now. Hopefully they can get caught up with that. So, first of all, starting off, general safety rules. General safety rules. No tools are to be used unless teacher has given permission. That permission comes in 2 phases, one of which is scoring and 80% or better on the quiz. Your quiz for this particular class will be Wednesday. 80% or better, and then I will let you know when it is time to use the tools. You will never come right through the door and start working with the tools. You will always report to the seat that you've been assigned to here this morning. All right, next thing, safety glasses must be worn. We have safety glasses over here in our cabinet. I'm hoping that they can be in a little bit better, more organized shape than they are currently, but your safety glasses must be worn when we are using tools and machines in the lab. Now, if you have regular glasses, I will allow those to be your safety glasses because I'd rather you see what you're doing than have a piece of plastic on your face and not be able to operate the tools and see what you're doing. So, if you have glasses, you may use those as your safety glasses. Now, if you wear contacts one day, you're going to need to use a pair of these because that does not provide you the protection that you need in order to get your eyes protected. Next. No open-toed shoes, long hair, loose clothing. Now this time of year, open-toed shoes, flip-flops probably aren't a thing, but towards the end of the year and towards the beginning of the year, sometimes we'll have people wearing flip-flops. If you happen to have, and I know it's kind of weird to do that in November or December, but if you have flip-flops on, bring your gym shoes. Your gym shoes can be sufficient. We need to have a covering over the top of your foot because some of the tools and machinery that we use has the potential for some hot sparks and different things to fall off and potentially burn the top of your feet. Sam, go ahead and put your computer down, please. Thank you. You can go ahead and keep that temptation away. All right, so also long hair. If you have long hair, you should bring with you to Tech Ed a hair tie. I do have rubber bands. I'm told they're not very comfortable. That is something that you would want to bring to Tech Ed. So that way you can, and if we're going to give you a locker here, your locker will eventually be located on the front side of the table where you sit. You can keep one in there just so you have it. Loose clothing on long jersey day or whatever. If you've got long sleeves, try and get them out and rolled up. Another big thing, hoodies. Now this time of year we're wearing hoodies. Those hoodies have strings. You don't want strings of hoodies or long hair, loose clothing to get wrapped around any of our spinning parts because that means that if you happen to get stuck, you're going to have an untimely meeting with something that you're not going to enjoy meeting face to face here. So make sure if you have hoodie strings, long sleeves, anything that could potentially get caught in our spinning equipment, make sure that that's tucked away. Next, talk to you a little bit about keep hands away. Now, some of this stuff is totally common sense, but don't touch spinning, sharp objects.
We have someone on hold duty to the main office, please. Someone on hold duty to the main office, please.
Okay, we'll get somebody on hold. Do not touch blades that are spinning, that are sharp, that are moving, that are hot. Okay, use your common sense, and sometimes we tend to forget here in 7th grade. Sometimes we can get you squared away just to try and remember and use your brain as you see fit. Next thing, never leave a machine until it is stopped running. Let me give you an example here. And actually, it looks like this machine might in fact be broken. It is. So I'll give you an example here on our drill press. That's currently off. The drill press is currently off. However, it's still spinning. Our bandsaw is notorious for that. When you turn this machine off, our bandsaw off, it completely runs for maybe another 30 seconds. So it's real important that you get and visibly see that machine come to a stop before you walk away. You don't want somebody else coming up to the machine, seeing it, assuming that it's not running, and potentially hitting that blade. Okay, next thing here, stay arm's length away from anyone using a machine or a tool. Back in Cub Scouts, what we called this was our blood circle. In other words, when we got our license to operate a pocket knife, if you could put your hand out and nobody was within your arm's length or your arm's reach, chances are of you hitting somebody with a slipped knife or a slipped tool is very slim to none. So if someone's using the machine, don't be crowding over top of the back of them. You need to give them that arm's length. As long as you can stay an arm's length away, your chances of getting hurt are very little. Okay? Last thing here before we get into our emergency steps. Do not make adjustments without teacher supervision. Here in 7th grade, we do not even give you the ability to do adjustments. If something needs fixed, if something needs adjusted, you need to let me know and I will make the adjustments for you. Questions on our general rules there? Pretty straightforward. I know some of you have had this for STEAM already. Some of you are going to see this in a couple of days for STEAM as well. So that's our general rules. A couple things here. Next thing, emergency steps. When we have an emergency in the lab, and you'll know when that occurs. Things that normally are the way they are just doesn't seem right. Your instincts will tell you, hey, that's an emergency. We gotta follow these 3 steps. One of which, the first step, kill the power. Whether it's on the machine, you can hit the stop button, you can hit the red button on these machines to stop the power. Or if you're not able to turn that power off, or you see somebody else who is unable to turn that power off, we have emergency stop button in each corner of our lab that turns the power off to every machine in the lab. So if something bad occurs and we have an emergency, the first step is to kill the power. Kill the power. Next thing, get to safety. You do not want to try and save the day. We want you to just get the heck away from whatever it is that's going on. Say somebody accidentally cuts our electric wire here. It's sparking away, smoking, sparks flying everywhere. Don't think that you're going to save the day for your fellow classmates by coming over here and grabbing the wire. Get yourself as far away from the situation as possible. That kind of also goes along with the fact that if you were to not do so well with blood and guts, if something happens in the lab where somebody gets injured, which has happened, unfortunately it has happened, and you see blood and you start to feel lightheaded, and you don't do so good with seeing that kind of stuff, get yourself and sit down on the floor. I would much rather you sit down on the floor, my filthy dirty floor here, than fall face first into a running machine or one of our cast iron vices here. Just get yourself to safety. Last, very important though, is that you must tell the teacher. I will never get mad at you if you tell me that something happened. Don't be afraid to come to me and say, Mr. Finn, this machine broke, or Mr. Finn, I injured myself on this tool. Well, it's very important that I know what happened so that I can make sure that that doesn't happen again, and do what we can to prevent it from happening in the future. In addition to that, if there's a tool that's broken, I need to fix it. I need to make sure that that tool is properly functioning. A broken tool is an unsafe tool. I want to make sure that it is in functioning order. I will not get mad at you. Now, when I will get mad at you is if I hear about it from an email from parent at home or somebody else. Oh, my son or daughter was in your class and they chopped their finger off and I didn't even know anything about it. Do not hide things. Obviously, that's a little bit of an extreme. But don't hide injuries from me. Don't hide things that are broken. I can fix those. I won't be mad. That's the kind of stuff that happens in this lab. But please, please, please make sure that I'm aware of it so that I can make sure the situation is prevented next time. And also to follow up and make sure that you don't need to go to the nurse, hospital, the morgue, So we need to reach out and we need to find out what's the next step that needs to be taken. All right, questions on the emergency step. That is a test question. Test question. Put a little star next to it. You need to know what happens in an emergency. All right, you good on that?
Yes.
All right, next thing, margin of safety. Margin of safety, and this is a test question that if you mix up, you will not get your 80% or better. So your margin of safety, there's a section of the test that says it gives a certain machine, wants to know what the margin of safety is. The margin of safety is the area on a machine that body parts should not enter. So anywhere where there's a cutting edge, a blade, a wheel, whatever, is an area where you don't want to put your fingers or any body parts near. Margin of safety. Good news for you here in 7th grade, however. Margin of safety is 4 inches on every machine but one. So if you had to guess margin of safety, if they're asking you, what would be a good guess? What would be a good guess, margin of safety? 4 inches, absolutely. We'll tell you, and I will make it very well known which one of those machines is the 2-inch margin of safety. But for the most part, nice thing about 7th grade machines is that pretty much everything's 4 inches except for the one, which is our scroll saw. We'll talk about that here in a minute. All right, margin of safety. We got that out of the way. I'm gonna jump around here a little bit. Derek, you can take your pencil back here if you want. I'm going to jump around a little bit. This won't actually be in order of your paper here, but I'm going to go over here to the hand tools. Hand tools. Hand tools. Anything from hammers to saws. These are called coping saws. We'll get a lot of use out of these on our vehicle project. Once you've passed your test, and I've given you the permission to go out into the lab and use the tools, you can use anything in this tool cabinet. These are all fair game for you to use on your projects. Safety on these is pretty simple. 1, remember that arm's length. Be an arm's length away from anybody using them. 2, when cutting with any of these tools, you want to cut away from yourself. Cut away from yourself with hand tools. Not a whole lot more here other than the fact that some of these, and actually we do have another tool inside of here that is powered. This is called a Dremel tool. Dremel tool. Rules on the Dremel tool. 1, anything that you do work on needs to be either clamped to the table or in one of our vices. And yes, you guys finally get to touch the vices. For whatever reason, 7th graders have difficulties keeping their hands off these things. Dremel tool must be clamped. It must be in a vise, whatever you're working on. I think that's about it. This hand tools kind of also deals with some of our battery powered drills. Give you these here. A couple things on the battery powered drills. Batteries, they go dead. So you'll know when the battery starts to die, you're going to take it out from the bottom. In the back of the room, there are a couple chargers. Swap it out with one that works. Back in business. This is what's called an impact driver. Impact driver is strictly for putting in screws and nuts and bolts. Our drill is changeable here. You can change the bits out of it, and you can, we actually have something we'll talk a little bit about in our STEAM class. It's called a pre-drill. If you're putting a screw into something, which I don't think you'll really be doing here on your CO2 car, but if you're putting something into a piece of wood, you need to give it a path with what's called a pre-drill. Right, so those are our battery-powered drills, our hand tools. Questions on hand tools, battery-powered drills, Dremel, anything along those lines? All right, while you're seated here, might as well just keep you here in your seats. We're going to talk to you a little bit about our next machine here. This is called our drill press. Drill press. All right, drill press. Margin of safety on the drill press is 4 inches. That's question. 4 inches on the drill press. Drill press is designed to drill straight up and down into parts. We're going to use our drill press on the far side. This one is actually what we use for our 8th grade project. 7th grade drill press is over on the far side of our racetrack there. That's what you're going to use to drill your axle holes on your CO2 car. That is the first thing that you're going to do to the block once I give it to you. Because once you change the shape of that block, you'll start to give a little bit of an angle to the piece of wood, which potentially could put a crooked angle into your vehicle. So nice thing about the drill press, get it straight up, straight down, able to knock holes and things. Couple rules on the drill press. Let's see, I'll make sure I cover it here. Alright, couple things here. You will notice what I have here. This is what's called a backup board. This is a test question. Backup board. Backup board has two purposes. One of which is to protect the table of the machine. In other words, when we're drilling through things, we don't want to be drilling directly into the metal table on this machine. So we have this piece. This is kind of like a sacrificial piece that we're going to use to give us protection on our machine. Next, I'll give you a little demo on that real quick here. Let me grab a drill real quick. Grab a piece of wood here. I'm going to demonstrate something that's called blowout. Blowout can be prevented by having our backup board to drill directly into. You'll need to move out of my blood circle here. Blowout is what happens when a drill bit forces its way through our wood, which also has some splinters. You'll see that there's kind of a little bit of a grain direction. Let's see if I can give a good little demo of blowout here, just so you can kind of remember. There you go. There's some nice blowout. Now, had I have drilled that directly into another board or a sacrificial piece, that would not have occurred. So what we want to do on our test question here, drill press. Drill press. 1, backup board protects the machine. 2, prevents blowout. Those, you'll have to list those on the quiz. All right. Drill press, a couple other things here. We're talking about backup board. If you need to change, which you actually won't have to, if you need to change the bit on any of these machines, you're going to use this, and it's actually a test question. This is the only reason I'm going over this. In 7th grade, you don't make adjustments to the machines, but the part that you use is what's called a keyed chuck. And this keyed chuck can loosen and remove or tighten up once you put your into the chuck. This is what's called a keyed chuck, and that is a test question there, keyed chuck. All right, next thing. 2 or 3 parts to this question. It has to do with a long end of a piece of lumber. If drilling on the drill press, which way does this rotate? Which way do we have it rotate? Okay, it's going this way, which is, what is that, clockwise. So sometimes, what will happen with our drill press is the part that we're drilling gets hung up, it gets stuck, and it starts to swing around. Now, the idea of this safety rule is that when drilling on the drill press, anything with a long end, the long end should be to the left. And the reason for that has to do with the fact that if this gets caught up in the drill press, it's spinning this way. What's it going to hit first if it's on the left? The machine. We would much rather hit the machine than if we had it here on the right-hand side. What's it going to hit first? You. We don't want that to hit you. So the long end on the drill press. Long end on the drill press. Okay, goes to the left. Okay, we don't want it to the right. Last but not least here, we have, for our 8th grade project, we have this as a clamp, which will clamp your board down to the table up against the blowout, or the backup board. All items must be clamped or in a fixture. Fixture is actually what we use on the drill press for our CO2 car. Fixture is just simply something that holds your part in place along a certain spot. You do not need to clamp at that point because we have it in what's called a fixture. Drill press, I believe that's it. Let me make sure I got everything. Yep. Questions on the drill press? Drill press. Margin of safety on the drill press. Quick, Brett. 4. Good. Give me the catch off guard. Alright. Next thing we're going to talk to you a little bit about is, and it looks like I got to fix it before I can actually power it up for us here. This is still a good demo for us here. This is called the band saw. The band saw. The band saw I don't believe is even on your page. So you'll have to write that down underneath on your study guide. B-A-N-D-S-A-W. Band saw. Band saw. Now, as the name implies here, it's a saw blade that is a band around these two tires, these two rubber tires. I don't know what's going on with this one. Okay. Now, bandsaw. Couple rules on the bandsaw. Margin of safety on the bandsaw is 4 inches. 4 inches. Another rule on the bandsaw. Test question. You never want to stand to the right of the bandsaw. And here's why. This one we were fortunate enough that this didn't break the blade, it's just off track. But if that blade breaks, it's going to come out the right-hand side. So a lot of times we position our bandsaw somewhere where you really can't get in there unless you really try. Now we do have a bandsaw at the back of the room, there by Brody. Brody's he's in the danger zone there. So if somebody's using that bandsaw, they need to not be to the right of it where Brody is. And we don't use that too often here in 7th grade, but that's just something that the same rules apply on that particular bandsaw. 4-inch margin of safety, never stand to the right. I think that's about it what you need for the quiz. Questions on the bandsaw? Bandsaw. Alright, let's do what we can here. I think we're going to have to get mobile. Yeah. What we're going to need you to do is we'll have you stand back far enough. We don't need glasses right now on you. If you were operating these machines, you would. I'll put a pair on though. What we're going to do is we're going to stand up and we're going to go back to the far back corner there, which is called our scroll saws. Scroll saws over here. These are all very similar. There's 4 of them here. This is the scroll saw. Margin of safety on the scroll saw is 2 inches. 2 inches. This is the one that we spoke of that we would not, that we do not have a 4-inch margin of safety on. Couple things on the scroll saw. You're always operating with your fingers on the opposite side of the blade. You never want to be pushing directly at that blade. Scroll saw, couple things here. It is for cutting what's called irregular shapes and curves. Irregular shapes and curves. I got a couple curves here that I've marked. Now, it is not okay to back out of a cut on the scroll saw. That's a test question. You would have to turn the machine off and back out of it. Now, how we can prevent that has to do with something called relief cuts. And relief cuts are just straight in, straight out cuts that provide you, as the name implies, relief along these long curved cuts. So I'll show you how to do a couple relief cuts here. Yeah. Apparently that's on the... Straight in, straight out. as you can see, I've left a little bit of line there for us to do some sanding. That is called an outside curve. Let's do an inside curve so I can do a little demonstration on both types of sanders. So I've got two different types of curves here. I've got one that's called the outside curve, and then we have one here that's called inside. And like I said, you want to leave a little bit of space for you to sand down. If you cut directly to your line, you end up with a smaller part than you intended, and in some cases with your CO2 car, you might be in an illegal vehicle. All right, questions on scroll saw. Margin of safety on scroll saw is? 2 inches. 2 inches. 2 inches. Sometimes these blades break, like I said before. I'm not going to get mad at you if you find one that breaks on you. I will fix it. Just come and find me and we'll take care of it. Okay? All right. Question on the scroll saw. Next up, we're going to come back to our sanders here. Sanders. We have what's called, they'll start out here with something called our spindle sander. Our spindle sander. Spindle sander margin of safety is 4 inches. Just like the scroll saw, you want to keep your hands on either side of the abrasive disc here. Spindle sander is for inside curves. Inside curves. Now you will notice the direction that spins. Still going in a clockwise manner here. Now, a little different than our drill press, though. You're going to go against the rotation. Now, if you go with the rotation, what's going to want to happen is this saw or this piece of wood is going to want to come flying out of your hands. You want that abrasive the opposite direction here, so that you have a little bit of resistance. Kind of helps you hold it nice and even along the lines. Watch. One of our rules, never walk away from a machine until you've seen it come to a full and complete stop. Spindle sander, inside curves, 4-inch margin of safety. You want to go against the rotation. I think there's a test question that says something along the lines of what happens when you go with the rotation. As long as you put something along the lines of, might fly out of my hands, cart might slip, whatever, you should be in good shape. How's our time? Man, we might be able to get the bandsaw out of the way. All right, last but not least here, and I will do some review here, but I want to get this done here for the people who aren't. All right, belt sander. Belt sander is for outside curves, 4-inch margin of safety. Couple of rules on the belt sander. It always needs to be down on the table when you're sanding, not up here. Why would you not have it up here? You're gonna smash your fingers in between your part and the table here. Belt sander, outside curves, 4-inch margin of safety. Keep it down on the table. Belt sander, outside curves. Got time to finish this one? Not really. All right, our last sander that we're going to use, and this is new material for us here, has to do with what's called the disc sander. Disc sander. The disc sander, and actually we ordered new discs for this thing, and they haven't come in yet. So right now, we don't necessarily have a disc sander because we don't have the abrasive discs. So I don't want to hear you back here sanding and going away on the disc sander, and I hear a bunch of metal because there's no abrasive disc on these right now. However, we should be getting them in pretty soon. What you need to know about on the disc sander has to do with the direction of which it spins. Oops, excuse me. And a lot of dust. and which way and which side you place your part on the disc sander. Margin of safety on the disc sander, 4 inches. If you watch here, you can see kind of how it, let me reset it here. Must have had a power outage. There we go. You can see that it is rotating, and this one actually rotates in a counterclockwise manner. We have one in the other room that goes the other way. So we can't say, like we do on the drill press, you gotta be the left or right on it. In this case, you have to be on what's called the downward side of the rotation. The reason for that has to do with if you start sanding on the upward side of that rotation, in other words, where this disc comes out of the table, you end up having a potential for this thing to get grabbed and thrown out of your hands. Anybody ever see the movie Tommy Boy? Slowly, I will have no one to see the movie Tommy Boy. But he comes back from 8 years of college, sees his friend Lewis working on the buffer, he calls it, but it's really just a disc sander. What he does there is he borrows an oil filter and he says, "Can I try?" Well, he tries with his oil filter. He stands on the upward side of the rotation, and it takes that oil filter and bounces it out of his hand and bounces all the way across the factory, okay, because he's standing on the upward side of the rotation. You want to be on the downward side of the rotation. Not left, not right. You need to observe which way that is entering back into the table, and you need to be on that side. What's up?
Why is it for that one, there's like a little groove like this? Is that just for the...
All right, that's a good question. We actually have, if you look here, we've got these things called miter gauges that can actually slide in that channel and keep it nice and square. This isn't the right one, but that's what the groove is for there. We won't be using that stuff, okay? Anything else on that? That's a good question. All right, 4-inch margin of safety, sand on the downward side. It is for outside curves, All right, so I think that concludes the machines that you're going to be using. What I'd like you to do, go ahead and take a seat back at your seats, and I'm going to do what I can to give you some opportunity to see some actual test questions.